It's critical thinking time with Mr. Y. Why? Because it's a day that ends in Y. That's why. So, this is a series called How We Got Here and How We Get Out. And it's tailored very specifically to American history and American politics and why we are where we are today. And if you're not happy with where we are, I know I'm not, then this explores how we get out of this situation. In order to find our way out of it, we have to know where they came from, how they've been able to persist, and come up with different ways to approach the problem and begin deconstructing the system that has led us to this place where everyone is extremely polarized, where extremists seem to run both sides of the aisle, and where I think the biggest thing is that Americans feel disenfranchised. So if we look all the way back to 250 years ago, this first episode will be focusing on the founding fathers and the mistakes that they made. But the important part is to know that in each episode, there will be a what can we do today? Just because we're talking about 250 years ago doesn't mean that it's too late, that these things are dead and gone. We are living the results of them today, which means we are living in the present where we can change things. So let's start with these gentlemen. If you don't know who they are, these are generally considered the founding fathers of America. Who were these guys? Well, in order to get an idea of who these gentlemen were, besides the fact that they were all men, white, and wealthy, I think it's better to try and equate them to a current group of people. So if we look at these gentlemen and we think of them as the millionaires list, these were some of the wealthiest people in America as of 1776. So to correlate it, let's look at a different picture of a bunch of different portraits. And if you can imagine this group of people coming together for one common purpose, which is to establish a new country, then you could see how revolutionary it was back then for the founding fathers to do this. The idea that this group of people that we're looking at right now could ever come together to actually put together a common cause or some sort of common goal for, the greater good, to me is laughable. But it is what our country was founded on. So, like them or not, for better and for worse, our country was founded by the wealthiest. Ultimately, that's what they were doing. They're spending a lot of time trying to create a new system. So the Constitution that they created tried to balance a bunch of interests, and this was a huge debate. It took them months to write the Constitution. Again, I can't picture any of the billionaires today sitting in a room for 6 months trying to work things out, ever. But inevitably, the founding fathers in 1776 did create a system of compromises. I think the one that has the most longevity to it is the Connecticut Compromise by the OG himself, Roger Sherman. And since I'm from Connecticut, it's one of the few people I am very proud of to have come from Connecticut. Created Congress as it functions today, like the Senate and the House of Representatives. But that was a compromise between small and large states. Then we had the Three-Fifths Compromise, which was a compromise between slave and free states, but basically it made it an election issue until the Civil War. Slavery was not just a matter of human rights and of conscience, but of wealth, of economy, and of politics. And if that sounds familiar to you, it's probably because that's exactly how our system is set up today. The point is that these compromises created the country and established a base from which we could actually govern. Only problem is that all of these very smart, wealthy, learned men overlooked a very, very important flaw. And that is the Constitution does not address parties at all. And at the end of the day, when you have a series of compromises, you have a government created purely out of compromise between different interests and different groups. To have political parties be completely overlooked in the Constitution was a huge misstep for our country. It talks very extensively about the baneful effects of the spirit of party, that the alternate domination of one faction over another, such as Democrats over Republicans and vice versa, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, is natural to party dissension and is a form of despotism. The common and continual mischiefs of the spirit of party are such that it is the interest and duty of a wise people to discourage and restrain it. And of course, that was none other than George Washington, who was trying to warn us about this when he left office in September 1796. Obviously, we didn't listen as a country. And I would say that Americans are a lot of things, but at no point can I ever point to us and say we were a wise people, which is why we start here. Because if we can start reigning in political parties, perhaps we could start shifting the political landscape that we now live in. So why are they so bad? Well, they're private entities. They literally act like corporations. The only thing is that unlike corporations whose entire purpose is to make money, political parties' entire purpose is to accumulate power. And that's it. They are not beholden to voters. They're only beholden to money from donors and results when they win the election or lose the election. It's all about how do we keep getting elected in the next election. And if they lose, it's not the end of the world. The party continues to exist as long as they retain essentially a 51-49% share of political power. They are going to continue to exist. And they're a purely legal entity. They exist as a offshoot of the right of association. And since there has been no efforts to try and actually restrain how political parties operate, they can continue to exist forever. The only oversight that they have at this point in time, and it's a very recent thing, is oversight on campaign financing. They were able to get around it by creating super PACs, which were then recognized, and corporations were recognized as people in Citizens United, which was like 8 years later. And so we've been living in this, we'll call it hellscape, where political parties not only run everything, but they have no oversight. They have nothing to limit them. And for a system that is geared entirely around compromise and reining in different interests and different factions, all we can do for political parties is hope that they rein each other in. Obviously, that hasn't worked. And essentially, we have been living in a game of duopoly. So not monopoly, which is where we have one rich Uncle Moneybags running the show. We have two. They are called Democrats and Republicans, but throughout history, they've been called all sorts of stuff. Since 1796, we've had two parties who run the show. Doesn't matter what you call them. When you only have two companies, two corporations that run this entire industry, which is politics, it's a duopoly. And so the public who's supposed to benefit from this particular industry have not. And it's only become more patently obvious as the years have gone on. Now, a quick caveat. I am not saying that political parties should not exist. They are a necessity. It's obvious because even though they were not put in place officially, even though attempts were made to try and prevent them from being formed, they need to exist for sure. But the system that we have was not created with political parties in mind. It was formed around the fact that political parties came to be and, again, were completely unrestrained and basically running amok the entire time. The current system is not transparent. It's not accessible to the voters, and it's not particularly democratic. When you get to the point where you feel like your vote doesn't matter, people stop coming out to vote, which means that even more control is given to the few who are invested. We are in the system where we feel like our vote is relevant, depending on the state we live in, because the parties have made it that way. So you have to understand the system in order to make any changes, or even to recognize it for what it is. Primaries are the main way that we see parties running the show when it really is supposed to be a voter-based system. One method that has been brought up recently, and it's not new, but has gained a lot of traction in recent years, is called ranked choice voting. Has a bunch of different names, but essentially you put everybody in a pot and voters get to vote on who they think is not only best, but second best, third best, and fourth best. So depending on your political leanings, you can vote for a bunch of liberal candidates or a bunch of conservative candidates. But the point is that you don't only get one vote, you get multiple votes. And that way it allows for one big election to find out who truly has the people's vote, rather than who only has Democrats vote, who only has Republicans vote. And then when everybody else, about 40% of the population, actually about 45% of the population now are independents, they finally get to vote and they only have two choices. And it's whoever the extremists and the Democrats want or the extremists and the Republicans want. This is why people go, why don't we pick the lesser of two evils? Why do I feel like I don't like either of these people? Well, because there's no system that allows you to actually have the independents vote on who they think is best. And not just one best person, but the number of different options so that they can see the full field and make a determination based on the full field. Now, is this the end all be all? No. But the fact that I had not heard of ranked choice voting until this year, and come to find out that there are now 19 different states that have banned it straight up. So the area that I live in, Sarasota, had ranked choice voting since 2007 just for local primaries, local elections. And the state of Florida 2 years ago passed a law banning ranked choice voting from taking place at all anywhere in the state, and taking away that choice from cities like Sarasota. I think, to me, whenever something is outright banned, and especially when it's something that very few people actually know about, by comparison to like trans rights, which apparently everybody knows about, but ranked choice voting, far less people know about it. The fact that all the parties, because they control all the state governments, 19 of them have now banned it. I think that means there's something to ranked choice voting, simply because the establishment is trying to get rid of it. So what can we do? You can spread the word. If you've never heard of it, learn more. I'll post a couple links to videos that discuss it. And if you have heard of it before, then great. You should tell others and let them know about it and see what they think. Because the point of the ranked choice voting process is to broaden what people know about not just the system, but about the politicians who are running, the actual personal view of politics. Instead of just having one choice given to you by Democrats and one choice given by Republicans. So even if your state, like mine, has outlawed it, that doesn't mean that it's going to go away. Learn more about it, because if Democrats and Republicans agree that this is such a huge threat that they're going to ban it, then it deserves to have greater press. It deserves to have greater knowledge. Throughout American history, political parties have been a problem. Not because inherently they're evil or anything like that, but because they are a tool. And when you have a tool that is unchecked and can be used and abused to any extent pretty much imaginable, it's going to be a detriment to democracy. The whole point is we the people. And political parties are not about we the people. They're about their interests and their side of the aisle. In order to create meaningful reform, we have to assume that parties will be against it. So in order to get to more of a democracy and not duopoly, we have to treat parties as the barriers to true reform, at least until the reform reins them in. So if we limit the clout that parties have over the system, particularly elections, where we get to have the most say, theoretically, then we can start to enact meaningful change by showing the parties that they don't run the show, that this has always been about the people. So, with that said, as always, I'm here for the pursuit of knowledge and for asking why. And so, if these have sparked you to ask why as well, I would appreciate if you hit subscribe, like, share it, get the word out, like I said, and hopefully you'll have learned something today and pondered even more about what we don't know. And I always like to close with this saying that I think is more true every day that I spend on the internet. The truth may be out there, but the lies are definitely inside your head. Have a great day, everyone.